big and dare to fail.
Believe you can, and you're halfway there.
Turn your wounds into wisdom.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
You never fail until you stop trying.
The only impossible journey is the one you never begin.
Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible.
Have enough courage to start and enough heart to finish.
Try again. Fail again. Fail better.
In the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity.
No great thing is created suddenly.
Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself.
Giving up is not an option.
Welcome to Failure Isn't Fatal. I'm your host, Matthew Loudenberg, and today I am with Erin Brown. Hello, Erin.
Hey, Maddie.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here today.
Of course. Thank you.
So let's just jump right into it then. You have Hirschsprung's, is that how you pronounce it? Hirschsprung's disease?
Perfect.
Okay, good. So why don't you go ahead and give us a brief explanation of what is Hirschsprung's disease?
All right. Hirschsprung's is where the cells in your intestines that help with digestion don't work correctly. That's basically the short version of it. So
yeah, that's what I found in my research.
Yeah. Yep. So really what happened is when I was born, I wasn't eating properly, and my mom knew something was wrong. So she asked the doctors about it. They're like, no, she's fine. This kind of continued for a few days. And then at 4 days old, I had my first surgery. And that's where they went in and basically did biopsies and tests to see what was going on. And they went all the way up through all of the large and got halfway up the small intestines and found that the cells called ganglion cells weren't working. And so at 4 days old, I had to have my first surgery. And
wow, yeah. That's real young for a surgery.
Yeah.
I assume you probably don't remember it.
Oh no, gosh, no.
Well, I guess that's the plus side of that.
Yes.
So obviously then it's something that you were born with. Mm-hmm. And they don't really know exactly where it comes from. Is that right? They think it's genetic, but they don't really know exactly what determines who gets it and who doesn't. Right.
So it is a genetic condition. But as far as we know, nobody on my side of the family has ever had it, whether it was my mom or dad's side. And more times than not, it's a male characteristic disease as opposed to a female.
Well, so you just get lucky.
Mm-hmm. Just the lucky one.
So, okay. You mentioned that was your first surgery at 4 days old. How many surgeries have you had in total?
16.
16 between 4 days old and now, which is, and how old are you now?
35.
35. So between 4 days old and 35 years old, you've had 16 surgeries.
Yeah.
Do you still need surgeries to this day, or when was the last surgery you had?
My last surgery was in 2001. So I was about 14.
Okay. So it's been about 20 years.
Yeah.
So how did this affect your early life then? Let's talk about your life from 4 days to 14 years.
It was pretty hard. There were a couple of times that I was taken back to Cincinnati, Ohio. So in the 80s, Hirschsprung's was still was relatively new. Even still, a lot of people don't know much about it, if anything. So my parents, of course, did research because they only wanted the best. And they found a doctor out in Cincinnati, Ohio, who did a bunch of the procedures. So I was back there, I think 2, maybe 3 times.
Okay.
for them to do some different procedures. And they were able to stay at the Ronald McDonald House, which was really nice. My brother unfortunately couldn't come, but he did come maybe once or twice, I think, to visit. So that was really, really hard for him. And then, obviously on my parents, of course, because my mom was the one that was back there with me mainly. So my dad wasn't able to really come because we had my brother and they had to take care of him. He was 3.5 at the time. So school, work, all those kinds of things. What I mainly remember though is, like 4 or 5 years old and on, having a G-tube, which is just a button. So they cut a hole in your stomach and it goes down through to help with feedings. And I had that from, I don't even know what age, up until I was about 12.
So how does that work? They put food in there? You don't, or?
So what they do is they put, not necessarily, it's food, but it's liquid. And it's
like just nutrients and stuff.
Correct. So it's hooked up to a pump. And it, just like a pump you would see in the hospital, and it just drips in. And so I had that almost all day when I was a kid. And then as I got older and was able to eat more and my gut tolerated more, I was not on it as frequently. It was more nighttime feeds.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was definitely hard growing up having this thing sticking out of your stomach, because of course nobody understands it, nobody knows. So in kindergarten, my mom did come in because it's something that kids have to know about, because kids, roughhouse and they play and they tackle and things like that. Yeah.
You definitely don't want that getting tugged out.
Exactly. So we had basically like a show and tell in kindergarten. And stood there with my shirt up. My mom and dad my mom showed all of the kids and explained it to them in a way that they could understand. And I grew up with these kids, kindergarten to 8th grade. So they were all aware. They knew everything that was going on. They knew a little bit about Hirschsprungs to what they could understand, but they were very supportive and very protective, which was really
that's good. Yeah.
But it was nice knowing that I could grow up with these kids and that it wasn't something that every year we would have to teach new kids about.
Yeah, you don't want to stand in front of the class lifting your shirt up every year.
Right, exactly. So once they knew, once they knew, it was a lot more helpful. But even still, it's like going out in public in a bathing suit, right? Because at the time, obviously I was little, so I wore the one pieces, but there's a thing sticking out of the bathing suit. And then even if I wore like a 2-piece, everyone stares because of the scars. And so I was very self-conscious. And honestly, even to this day, I still am, which maybe I shouldn't be, but it's really
you shouldn't
hard
be.
to get past.
Yeah, I understand.
Very hard to get past. But I have great family and friends and a great support system to where if I feel insecure or anything like that, they'll really help build me up and don't worry about it, they're just ignorant and they don't know. And so I have to pull myself back to remembering that, which can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're not perfect. We all need a little reminder of things here and there. Yeah,
exactly.
So what did they do in these various surgeries? What's the procedure of how they try and fix these issues?
So one of the procedures was called, dang, I wish my mom was here to help with this. It was called a modified Duhamel. So what they do is they find the little tiny bit of functional large intestine, which I think was maybe 2 feet, so not very much. And
how long is the large intestine?
Oh gosh, the nurse and she doesn't remember. I I honestly don't remember.
But it's very long, right?
It is very long. Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
so only 2 feet of working large intestine is a very small percentage
very
of
small.
the intestine.
Right. So they took that, they cut it in half lengthwise and sewed it
Okay.
on to the small. So what they did is they made a pouch. So your intestines have bacteria to help obviously combat any organisms, anything that can cause harm to your body. And
Mhm.
so by having that tiny, tiny bit of functional large intestines and creating that pouch, it's going to help with that bacteria to kill anything that might cause an issue and cause harm. Other than that, the other one had something to do with like dilatations of the rectum because I wasn't having normal bowel movements.
Mhm.
And so they had to do, I don't know what exactly, but basically part of what they did is they cut like a V in my sphincter muscle
Mhm.
to help with those bowel movements. So those were kind of the main surgeries. So quite a bit of it, I want to say, were like the dilatations and things like that.
Yeah.
And then once I got older, two of the bigger ones were I had the G tube removed, or the button, which I called it, removed. And because I had it for so long, it wouldn't close on its own. And they had to go in and surgically close it. And
Okay.
then that caused a lot of issues when I was in my freshman year of high school swimming with scar tissue, and it would pull and get stuck. So I'd be hunched over until the scar tissue released itself. And when
Okay.
I was having all of those issues, we went in and they did a scar tissue removal. And that was, again, like 14, 15 years old. So that was the last one that I actually remember having.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Okay.
so many of them were, I was so young, I really don't remember
Yeah.
much of it, thank goodness.
Yeah, it's good to get it, I guess, out of the way, so to speak, when you're younger rather than when you're older.
Yeah.
So, uh, how does it affect your life now from, 14, 15, from that last surgery of the last, 20 years? Um, Obviously, it's not curable, right? So you still have issues with it today. So how does that affect you?
Yeah, not curable, which is a blessing and a curse, I guess, because I get to talk about it and explain things and live it day to day. But kind of the same as it did when I was younger. So I'm not supposed to eat anything high in fiber. My system can't absorb it. I have a very hard time with like absorbing salt and water. So anytime I feel really dehydrated, I'll like take one of those mini salt packets and I'll just dump it in my mouth and chase it with water basically to try and get me rehydrated. Or I'll drink Pedialyte. So a lot of it really right now is still kind of I'll say the gut issues where eating certain foods is really hard. Actually, a couple years ago, I ended up having a blockage, an intestinal blockage, and was on basically a liquid diet at home with Boost and Pedialyte for a few days just to let it clear up. So every day is something different, which can be very hard and frustrating. Probably a little bit of TMI, but those with Hirschsprungs don't have a normal bowel movement or bowel movement pattern. So I, like a normal person, I'll say, like yourself or anybody else, go maybe once or twice a day typically. Whereas depending on the day for me, I can go anywhere from 1 to 5 times or more.
Wow.
Typically it's like a looser stool. I won't say diarrhea because for me, diarrhea is very different. But I guess my looser stools would be kind of like a diarrhea for, again, like a normal person.
Yeah, normal. Okay.
So, that is very difficult. And kind of going back to where I have a lot of issues where I get insecure and things like that. And then I have, my friends and family there are because of the digestion and the not having all of the intestines. I don't fart like a normal person does. So mine come out when I'm actually using the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of imagine, right, being in a public place with just an explosive, I guess, like explosive bowel movement coming with a really loud fart, and the farts just basically keep coming because that's the only way I really get the gas out.
Okay. Yeah. I can understand that.
That has been probably one of the most difficult things that I've dealt with in my 35 years. The scars, they don't really bother me as much anymore. Depending on where I am, I kind of have fun with them and tell people that I got attacked by a shark just to see their reactions.
Now you can kind of make your own story if you really want to, and everybody has scars these days, so it's not as big of a deal as I think as you get older. People have we're in that age group, where maybe your friend group has C-section scars if they had kids, or it's more common for adults, I guess, to have scars, and they're more accepting of scars because they understand.
Right.
Versus kids seeing scars, and it's a whole different world when you're a kid. It's weirder, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and even, as an adult, if I go to the beach or I'm at a pool and having kids stare, it's kind of like, and the parents just don't say anything. I'm like, can you like say something? I mean,
yeah. It's up to the parents to teach their kids, like, hey, she has scars for a reason, and that's, it's normal and it's okay. You don't need to stare at it.
Right. So it's given me, and I'm guilty of things too. Of course, you want to look, you're curious, but at the same time, it's like, you know what? They're here. You don't know their story.
Right.
But you don't have to sit there and just stare at it and, just look, go on about your day, whatever. But
now, what if you're in that situation? Would you want them to, maybe like the kid, for example, like, would you want that kid to come up and ask you then maybe for the story behind it, or would you rather them just not talk to you at all and just ignore you?
Oh yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I would love to bring more awareness to Hirschsprung. I actually belong to a couple pages on Facebook, and some of it is like survivors of Hirschsprung, some of it is families, things like that. And so that has really helped. But a lot of those that have this disease that I'm learning aren't in the United States. They're
it's more common out of the country.
There's a lot of people
that's interesting.
from Europe and like Australia, New Zealand area, because people will put, I'm so and so and I'm this age, I'd love to meet up. I live in Anaheim, California, right? But they're in New Zealand or Australia or England or wherever else. So they're some of the people from Australia have actually been able to get, at least get Hirschsprung's to be more noticeable by saying September is Hirschsprung's Awareness Month.
Okay. So we don't have do we have, I don't think we have one for United States, huh?
No. So
maybe it's something we could work on.
Yeah. I on my own have adopted that here. And so
okay, so you celebrated in September then?
I celebrated in September. So in September,
I guess celebrate's a weird word for that.
Yeah, it works. I try to bring the awareness in September.
Yeah, acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it. So I think it was last September, or the September before, I had a post on my Instagram and Facebook page that kind of showed, this is Hirschsprung's, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I kind of explained some of what I went through.
Kind of put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of my life, and I can't continue to hide from it and be ashamed of it. And maybe that's not the right word, but trying to bring more of that awareness and just really explain what it is. And again, it's really hard because people out here don't have it. And, even doctors are like, you have what? Like,
oh, even doctors haven't heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really taught in like nursing school or medical school. And when it is, it's a very generic teaching. So if we wanted to be, I guess, medically correct, my diagnosis is Hirschsprung's with short bowel.
Okay.
So, doctors or nurses or whatever, they learn about Hirschsprung's. That's it. There's not much teaching going into
on
it.
like the variations and stuff of it. I most diseases have some sort of variations, and it's not all exactly the same.
Right. So I even have a hard time with that. And a couple years ago, I ended up going into the doctor because I knew I needed IV fluids. Just because I was so dehydrated. I was drinking a lot of water, which I don't normally do. And I was trying to drink Pedialyte. Nothing was working. And my primary care doctor had told me in the past, she said, if you need IV fluids, call me, come into the office, we'll get you hooked up. There's no point in you going and sitting in the emergency room for hours and hours and hours just to get fluids. Right. So
to try and explain to them what's going on even.
Exactly. So I called, I got in, and a resident was taking care of me because it was just a day of appointment. And I said, I need some IV fluids. I'm very dehydrated. I'm not feeling well. Can you please give me fluids? The doctor said, come in and have this done. And she was like, well, let me take your vitals and check this and check that. And I'm like, okay, fine. You do your thing. No problem. I get it. Takes my vitals. Of course, my blood pressure is fine. Temperature, everything is fine. And she goes, no, you don't need fluids. You're fine. And I said, but I'm not.
This is not your primary though, right? This is.
Okay, no, it was just a resident. And I said, look, I have Hirschsprung's. I'm dehydrated. I'm drinking 2 40-ounce water bottles plus Pedialyte. And I don't do that. I need fluids. And she goes, no, you don't. Everything is fine. And I said, but I'm not. Like, I am not okay. So she's like, well, let's draw your blood. And I'm like, why? Because then in a couple days, when you get it back, it'll show that I'm low. But by the time you get them back, I'm going to be back at my baseline and I'm going to be okay. So I ended up calling my mom crying because I was just so frustrated at the fact that this doctor wasn't listening to what I had to say.
Yeah, I find that that I've heard that from a lot of people, that when they try and explain things to their doctors, they just want to. I feel like in today's society, a lot of people, not just doctors, but a lot of people in their jobs just have this, okay, I want to deal with you, get you away from me so I can be done with it and move on. They just want to boom, 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 get through their day, basically kind of without really addressing anybody's issues or dealing with, customers or patients or anybody. They just kind of want to hurry everybody along all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Terrible.
It is. It happened a couple years ago when I had an intestinal blockage. I wasn't eating. I ended up sleeping on the floor almost every night because I was having such bad pain on, I want to say it was like my left side. And the only way I would feel better is to have the hard floor pushing up against me. So, you know, between my mom and my now fiance, it's like, okay, what's going on? He was going to the store for me, getting me things to try and help me go to the bathroom. I'm going to doctor's appointments. I'm going to see the GI doctor and all these things. And at one point, the GI doctor throws his hands up and goes, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, can we maybe run some other tests? Because there's something going on if I'm not eating.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I took like a bite of cup of noodles or something just to get something in me and ended up throwing it up. So at that point, I actually started going to Long Beach Memorial, calling Cincinnati, and getting all of my medical records, which that's a lot of medical records from everywhere.
Yeah.
So I now have a binder full of my medical records from the time I was 4 days old up until, I don't know, about 14 or 15, which is okay. It's something that I need to have. But I ended up calling my pediatric GI doctor, and because I was in the hospital, and I'm like, you know, I don't know what's going on with me, but these are my symptoms. This is what I've been doing. This is what, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And he goes, you have an intestinal blockage. And I'm like,
wow, just like that over the phone.
just like that. And
wow. Some people really know their stuff.
he knows me inside and out. So he was my
Literally
doctor. Yeah. From the day I was 4 days old up until, you know, 18, whatever, however old you are when you graduate from pediatrics. But at the same time, he had told me years before, he goes, even when I retire, I'm still your doctor. If you need anything, you can always call me.
Oh, and that's a good doctor.
Yeah.
We need more doctors like that. We need more people like that in general.
We do. So, you know, I'm on the phone with him, like in a corner of Long Beach Memorial ER, trying to get reception and talk to him. And I'm like, they want me to drink magnesium citrate, which I had done the night before and it didn't do anything. And he goes, don't drink that. It's not going to do anything. And I said, well, that's what I said, but they told me to drink it. He goes, no, don't drink it. I said, okay. He goes, you need a CT scan. Okay. So when I finally get back into bed, my dad was there with me and we're talking to the doctor, and, you know, they give me pain medicine and all these things, and they did some test, I don't know. And they're like, kind of like, you're fine. And I'm like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah, we're fine.
We're fine. But yeah, I ended up doing like an out of the ER CAT scan, and I sent him the results, and he's like, yeah, it's just a blockage. So just drink only Pedialyte, drink Boost, small sips every 15 minutes over 2 hours. And like, you might be okay with some like chicken broth and some chicken and some rice, but just very minimal bland foods. And I'm like, 1 bottle of Boost in 2 hours, those things are so small. But for like, he goes, yeah, but it'll clear it up in like 3 days. And in like 3 or 4 days, I was back to normal.
Wow. Well, you definitely hold on to that guy's number.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of learned things over, you know, my 35 years of, if this happens, this is what I do. If I can't fix it, then I'll call him, or I'll go to the emergency room, right? It's
right.
So I'm one of those people, probably not the best, and don't do this, but I will wait until almost the last minute to go to the emergency room. Only because I'm like, well, I know ways to fix it. If I can't fix it, then okay. Only because I don't want to sit there and have doctors, oh, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
You know, like,
you're trying to explain to every doctor your full medical history
Yeah,
sounds
hard.
absolutely daunting.
It is. I mean, I'm 35 years old and I still take my mom to doctor's appointments with me because they're one of
Let
their.
her explain it.
Have you ever had surgeries? Yes. Why? Well, because
Especially when you don't remember a lot of them and your mom would remember them. So it's easier to have her explain the surgeries because you can only, you can only say so much.
exactly. I only remember
That makes sense.
bits and pieces of stuff, I remember having to have some scan done when I was little, and it was a contrast scan, so I had to drink barium. And they lied to me because I'm a kid, oh, it tastes like candy. It didn't taste like candy. And the only way my mom could get me to drink it is to play red light, green light. And trying to stop going down a slide doesn't work very well, but it was fun to try.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember random times of having my G tube changed because it had to be changed every so often.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I remember really random things from when I was little, but not enough for me to tell the doctors, oh, I had this surgery and this surgery. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was there, but I was 4 days old. I was less than a year old.
Yeah.
Don't ask
Who
me.
who can tell us anything that happened to them when they were 4 days old?
Right. And I'm glad I don't remember those surgeries.
Right. Exactly. So would you say, I'm curious to know, that this had a big impact on why you decided to become a nurse?
Yeah, it did. I have learned how to really understand both sides of the coin. I know what it is to be a patient, and I know what it is to be able to be there for that patient. And we've made great friends with some of my nurses that I still keep in touch with, and obviously my pediatric GI doctor.
Yes.
So to have that in the healthcare field nowadays, I feel is very rare. Have those relationships with your patients or their families. And I think honestly, that is a really, really, really important part of healthcare, to listen to your patients, to be there for your patients. And the fact that in just over a year of nursing, I've been able to do that already, I think really helps. But yeah, it definitely played a role because I was so interested, I'm like, ooh, this is kind of fun. Like, what else can I learn about?
Yeah.
And even when I was little, I think my aunt, my mom, I don't know, somebody bought me a little doctor's kit, and I carried that thing everywhere. I played with it all the time, and my aunt held on to it for years, and she gave it back to me. She was like, look what I found here. Do you want it? And I'm like, yes, please. And,
yeah, 35 years old, still playing with it.
Heck yeah, I do. My kids will play with it. But yeah, I mean, growing up with Hirschsprungs, you learn a lot, and you find out, that you want to change things and change how people's perceptions can be. So before I had always known I wanted to be in the medical field ever since I was a little girl. That never changed. Originally it was I wanted to be a doctor. And then when I got into college and had a hard time getting into classes, I'm like, well, maybe I'll be a teacher because I like teaching.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, special education, that would be really cool. So I started to kind of dabble in that and got my degree in liberal studies to teach. And I'm like, you know what? Nah, I want to be a doctor. Well, 6 years of schooling. My mom was like, I'm sorry, what? So
Yeah.
I shadowed my family doctor and I loved it, except for the going room to room. I didn't like the whole, you can, I'm going to spend 15 minutes with you or whatever and then leave.
Yeah.
On to the next one. And I'm going to spend 10 minutes with you and whatever else. And I'm like, this isn't, and I at the time had applied to pre-med and gotten into a program up north
Mm-hmm.
and actually went to look at the campus and look for places to live. And I was standing on the campus, and as beautiful as it was and as beautiful as the view was, I'm like, this isn't right. There's something missing. And so it was a very long drive home with my parents, and I don't think I talked at all. I just sat in silence, kind of trying to figure out my life and what I wanted to do with it. And when we got home, didn't really say anything. It was maybe 11, 12 o'clock. My mom went to bed and I just sat up watching TV. 10 minutes later, she comes out and she goes, all right, let's talk. I'm like, Mom, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And she goes, yeah, but neither one of us are going to sleep until we figure this out, which she's right. And we sat there and talked. And that's when I was like, I want to be a nurse. That's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to be there for them the way that my nurses were for you and Dad and for me. And that really kind of just got the ball rolling. And I started going to junior college to get all those classes out of the way for the prerequisites, and started applying to programs. And one of my old nurses reached out to me and she goes, hey, I want to talk to you. I work at West Coast. Let's talk. And I said, okay. So I talked to her and she got me in contact with those that I needed to be in contact with to apply. And I got in and started, and I had never felt more of myself before. And once I started the clinical rotations and going into the hospital and seeing patients, I finally felt that I was doing what I was meant to do with my life. And I really felt like I fit in and I belonged.
That's good. A lot of people never find that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course I have hard days. Everybody does. You have those days where you just feel tired and burnt out and you don't want to go to work. But
of course,
also one of those things where it's like, man, this sucks. I really don't want to work for 12 hours and deal with people or deal with this person, but at the same time, I'm like, but I love being here.
Yeah, it's fulfilling. And that's a hard thing to find in not just a job, but just in life in general. It's hard to find something that makes you feel fulfilled, like this is what you're meant to be doing and that you're doing the right thing.
Right. And I worked with adults so far, my year-long career, but I always knew I wanted to be in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit.
Yep.
So I applied and I knew pediatrics. I knew kids that's where my heart is, and that's what I wanted to do. So I would apply to Chalk, and I applied to Long Beach Memorial a few times, and it's hard to get into pediatrics. It's so difficult. So I wouldn't get in, and it was very hard to kind of stay happy and keep wanting to apply and push myself to not settle. And one of my old nurses who works at Memorial was like, hey, the NICU is hiring. And I'm like, okay, but I applied. She goes, what on your resume will stand out? I'm like, I don't know. My name is so generic. What am I supposed to put on there? And so I said, let me send you my resume. So I sent it to her. She sent it to the head manager of the NICU there. And that same day she reached out and she goes, hey, I'd like to interview you. When are you available? This is my schedule. And I said, oh, yes, absolutely. I said, out of her schedule, I said this day and time works. And that following day I had an interview, and I think February 15th, I got a phone call saying that I had been hired for the NICU at Long Beach Memorial.
Yeah. Well,
And, I had done a couple of interviews, obviously, trying to just get other jobs to not stay where I am. And I didn't feel right about them. I wasn't excited about them. I just felt like I was answering questions the way that I had to. And when I did the NICU interview, it was just very different. I felt more of myself, and I was so excited. And once I got the job, I mean, I literally started crying. I was just in tears. I called my fiance and I was like, I just got hired in the NICU. Can we go out and celebrate? And then I called my parents and told them, just all in tears, because I was so excited that I have finally landed my dream job, and I'm going to do what I really want to be doing. And going there, being happy, as hard as it is with those little tiny babies that are so sick.
Yeah.
But really being that advocate for them and being able to tell parents, like, I get it. My parents were here too, and
yeah, you can connect with them
exactly
on another level that other nurses may not be able to connect with them.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
your persistence paid off,
It did. It did. And that's the one thing I think, even oddly enough, Hirschsprung's kind of taught me, is you keep pushing. You don't let things keep you down. And my mom had always taught me, this disease does not control you. You control it. And as hard as it can be, I've tried to apply that to my life. I control life. Life doesn't control me. It doesn't control everything that happens. You have to find a way to sit there and say, you know what? No, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to do. And you persevere and you push, and it's hard. It's definitely
of course
hard.
Yeah, definitely.
It's easier to give up and sit back
but
and say,
the things in easy are, if it's easy, is it really worth it?
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I lived a relatively normal childhood. My parents let me go. I went out and played with my brother. I played in the dirt. I played in the sand. I swam. I played at the beach. I played soccer. I attempted softball, right? I mean,
I attempted soccer too.
Not very easy.
No.
But my parents it wasn't, we're going to put you in a bubble. You're going to live, and I remember.
Well, what's the point of living if you have to live in a bubble,
Yeah.
It's kind of moot at that point.
Exactly. So yeah, they just, and it was one of those things with, one of my favorite things to eat was vegetables. And my mom's like, fine, you want to eat more? Your stomach hurts. Don't cry to me. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'd eat more, and I'm like, oh, that was a bad idea. But even my pediatrician, I remember when I went into high school, I wanted to be just like my brother, who swam and played water polo. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do that too. Yeah. And so I went in for my physical, and I told the doctor, said, I'm going to play water polo. And she goes, you're going to do what? Yeah, I'm going to play water polo.
Yeah.
So at, I don't know, a 98-pound freshman, sat there and played water polo and swam for 4 years. But
you can't let stuff hold you back. You can pretty much do whatever you want to do. Obviously there's some limitations to certain things, but for the most part, if you really have a drive to do something, you can do it regardless of injuries and diseases. Like I said, obviously there's limitations. You don't want to push injuries and stuff too far based off of whatever your injury is and how severe and stuff, but there's always a workaround, I guess, is my point,
Right. Yeah, you have to be willing to push yourself to a limit, but know your limit, and know that, again, the disease doesn't control you, and it doesn't define who you are.
Right.
Whether it be Hirschsprung's or Down syndrome or like autism, Asperger's, any disease, you own it and you
Mhm.
make what it is. And I think that's one of the hardest things that people don't understand.
Yeah. I
So
mean, Forrest, and we
I,
had Forrest on the podcast
yeah,
a little while back, and he doesn't let his autism, define his life. That guy pushes the barriers. He does all kinds of things. I love that kid.
yeah, and you really have to. And one of the things that I love is that people, I have a bracelet that says I am a warrior, and it has Hirschsprung's disease awareness. And I wear it every single day, all day long. And I have a sweatshirt, that says I'm a warrior and things like that. And when people see the sweatshirt or see the wristband, they're like, what does that say? And I tell them, and they're like, oh, what's that? So it's trying to bring that awareness. And
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually working on a design for a shirt that says I'm a warrior.
yes, I love it. I will wear it. But I mean, even my fiance has a band and it says I love a warrior. And people will ask him, what is that? And then he explains it. So the fact that he has adapted and adopted all of this, and is willing and has been willing to learn over as long as we've been together, and be able to explain it to people, and he wants to be there, and he'll take me to the emergency room or doctor's appointments, and is trying to figure it out, helps as well, because it brings awareness to,
yeah, of course, every little bit helps,
or to whoever else, and it's like, okay, well, that's great, because the likelihood of us having a child with Hirschsprung's is rare and is low, but there's always that chance.
of course. Yeah.
So the fact that he is learning about it really helps, because it's like, oh, well, now I know what our kids could potentially go through. Right. So it's nice. And again, I mean, I love that you're doing this, and I appreciate it, because I want to bring more awareness to Hirschsprung's.
Well, of course. Yes, I'm trying to bring awareness to all kinds of things. That's why we're doing this podcast. There's a lot of things in the world, whether it be from diseases to injuries to situations and all kinds of stuff that just needs more light shed on it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will definitely continue to do my yearly September Hirschsprung's Awareness Month, and just, hey, this is what it is. If you have questions, let me know.
Yeah.
I don't mind answering them. Again, I'd like to bring more awareness to it, because they're just like autism. There's so many different. There's such a spectrum. Or like Down syndrome. There's such a spectrum, and it's like no one person is the same.
Right.
Just like, quote unquote, a normal person. Nobody is the same.
Right. So exactly.
Everything, which is hard. But yeah, living with it it's been difficult, but I think it's really been a blessing.
Yeah, it's all on how you look at things. It's all in your perspective. If you want to view everything in a negative way, then everything's going to be negative. But if you can take the bad things that happen and turn them into positives, then you can have a better life. It's all about how you react to things, and we have complete control over that. You may not have control over the outside world and what people say or do to you, or things that happen to you from the outside, but you have complete control over how you take those things and how you react to those things. So it's all about reacting in a positive way.
Exactly. You got to try to turn the negative into a positive, or, realize it could be worse.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay for where I am, and again, you have to have fun with it.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds, like, again, telling people I got attacked by a shark. Why not? It's fun.
Hey, yeah, life is too short to not enjoy it. You might as well make the most out of it.
Right. And it honestly, I think it's more fun to see the reaction on somebody's face. They're like, what? Yeah. And the shark changes all the time, and where it happened changes, but it's funny.
Yeah.
Entertaining story for me and whoever else is around that knows the actual story. Keeping a straight face can be kind of hard, but
yeah,
once I get going with it, it's like I just add more to the story. Whoever I'm with will kind of add in, so it's fun.
Yeah, you gotta, like I said, enjoy life, and sometimes making fun of things is the way you deal with things, like Mike. Mike makes a lot of jokes about his dad, and his dad passed away some years ago, and he makes jokes about it all the time. Not, and it's just, that goes back to, him and his dad, and they had a very joking relationship, and they made some highly inappropriate jokes with each other. And so I think that's kind of how he chooses to, remember his dad, by keeping those jokes going. Even though some other people might look at it and go, "Wow, I can't believe you just made a joke about your deceased father." But
right.
And he's like, "Well, my dad would have laughed at that joke." So, it's all in it's, they may think it's unacceptable, but to him, that's how he deals with it, and that's how he remembers his father. And he, like I said, his dad would probably laugh at those jokes. I knew his dad, and I can agree that those are the kind of jokes that he would enjoy. So it's like, just because someone else thinks it's wrong doesn't mean it is. It's
right.
Making jokes about certain things is okay if that's how you want to deal with it.
Yeah, and it keeps his memory and his spirit alive. So it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to laugh at yourself. It's okay to laugh at your failures. It's okay to laugh at your mistakes and your downfalls. And it's part of life.
It is part of life. And then the bigger part is, how do you deal with that afterwards? Do you just go on that mistake, or, to use your brand, do you rise up from it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's all about how you deal with it. And like I said, you have complete control over how you react and how you deal with every situation that arises, whether you had control over that situation or not. You have control over what you do from there. What's the next step? That's totally up to you.
Yeah, exactly. And, I've had days where I have a hard time, or something happens, and especially with Hirschsprungs, that I'm very down about it, but then I can laugh about it later.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously in the time, you may not want to laugh about it right then and there. There's, an appropriate time to, wait period, obviously, for certain situations. Mike wasn't, making jokes when his dad was in the hospital,
of course.
But, later on, when you look back on it, some situations are, can be made humorous. If, like I said, if that's how you want to deal with the situation, that's your prerogative to deal with your situation how you want to. And there's no other person that can tell you that's wrong, that's right. It's your life, it's your situation, and you can deal with it how you want to. It's your decision whether you want to deal with it in healthy ways, unhealthy ways. Obviously, the healthy ways are the better choice, but who am I? Who are you? Who's anybody to tell someone else how to deal with their situations?
Exactly. You can't, because you don't know really what that situation is, right? And you don't know how it's affecting them internally at that time. Yeah. And so you can't judge a book by its cover, right? And walk a mile in their shoes before you really understand what they're going through. And even then, can you understand it?
Right. And I think that's what I mean, that's what my goal is here with this podcast, is to try and help people to understand other people's situations and other people's ways of thinking and other people's, you know, dealings in life. Like, not everybody had the same opportunities that you had. Not everybody went through the same situations that you did. So I think it's important to get other people's life experiences and, you know, take what they have experienced and try and learn from it. You know, to learn from your own mistakes is obviously the best case scenario. You know, if you made a mistake, you learn, oh, you touched the stove, it was hot. You learned, hey, don't touch the stove again. It's hot.
Right.
But if I can watch you touch the stove and go, oh, Erin got burnt by the stove, well, I don't want to touch that stove because I don't want to get burnt. So, you know, I think learning other people's experiences can, you know, help us. And obviously, in the case of, you know, genetic diseases that you're born with, I can't be like, oh, well, Erin got Hirschsprungs, I don't want to get Hirschsprungs. Like, it doesn't work that way.
You're
but
right.
I can still learn, like, from your experiences. I'll go like, this is what she dealt with, so I can be, you know, more understanding to like the things that you go through on a day-to-day basis, and, you know, be like, oh, well, you know, and then like take things with a grain of salt, I guess, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's, you know, just because you can't see the disease, right, or you can't physically see that something is wrong with me or a person,
Right. Yeah.
doesn't mean that we don't have something.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
walk around in a crop top or in a shirt that shows my stomach just to say, hey, look at me, because it may not be anybody's business.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right? So, you know, why, yes, bring awareness, of course, but I don't need to, for lack of better words, show off.
Yeah, you don't need to flaunt it. And this, you know,
Exactly. So, you know, again, it's an invisible thing in a sense, but those that are close to me know about it. They know what it is, and they really help in the support of, if I'm having a bad day or I'm dealing with a stomach issue or anything like that, or I, you know, walk out of the bathroom crying, they know immediately what happened. I don't even have to say anything. And it's reminding me, they don't know, right? They're ignorant. It's like, and I get that, but it's just very difficult to remind myself of that, because it hurts your feelings.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And to me, I guess I've never, and maybe I'll never understand, it's like, why is it so funny?
Yeah.
Everybody does it. So
yeah.
like, help here. And I think that's where it gets hard, you know. So then again, it's the people are ignorant, people don't understand, and have like a comeback. And I'm like, yeah, but in that moment, it's hard to be like,
it's hard.
I'm alive. You know, it's like you think of all these things afterwards. And so it's, again, having you and Tara or David and my parents and everybody else support me, I think has been probably the best thing for me to get me past so many things and really help me remember it's really not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's who I am. And I'm lucky to be here.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
Hirschsprung's, again, in the 80s, late 80s, was, nobody really knew about it. And even
things definitely could have gone a different way.
Exactly. So it's, you know, it's a blessing that I'm here and that my parents fought as hard as they did to get me to where I am. And again, the support is just phenomenal.
Yeah. I think it's very important in life to have a good support system for any reason, just to have, you know, you may lose your job, or you may go through you know, a death in the family or of a friend, or, you know, any number of bad things happen in life to everybody. And to establish a good support system long before you need them is important, because you never know when you're going to need them, first off. You don't plan for, bad things to happen. But to pick your friends and stuff wisely, I think is a good lesson for everybody to learn. A lot of people hang out with someone and they think just because they've known that person for a long time, or even family, people think, oh, because they're family, I have to spend time with them and hang out with them. But if your friends or family are toxic and not supportive, then it's okay to say, hey, I'm not gonna, you don't even have to say anything really, but it's okay to not to talk to those people, to not spend the time with those people. Just like they say, you are what you eat, and I think therefore I am. Like, you are who you hang out with too. Like, who you choose to spend your time with says a lot about you as a person. And so like they say, if you want to be a millionaire, you need to hang out with millionaires, because you pick up on their mindset. So when you hang out with people who have negative mindsets, you're going to pick up on that negative mindset. Like, it's just how we are as humans. We absorb everything that is around us and everything that is within us. So it's just a really important key part of life to pick and choose who you spend your time with. And that's going to help you succeed in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've lost people that I thought were great friends. And part of that is growing up, of course. You just grow apart and hit different parts of your life at different times. But at the same time, those that are important to you and that the relationship means a lot, they're going to stay.
Of course.
And they're going to be a part of your life. And, again, I'm so grateful to have some of those people. I mean, one of my best friends now, I met her my freshman year of high school and she was a junior. And we don't get to talk all the time, but we still are so close. And I know I can call her for anything, same with Tara and some of my other friends. And so, you don't need to have a big circle of friends. You can have 4 or 5 friends and that's perfect.
It's quality, not quantity. Definitely. Exactly. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's, again, it's been a hard 35 years, but I'm still learning every day how to deal with it. And something new comes up all the time. And it is, okay, how do I fix this one?
Yeah. Well, I think the next 35 years will be better.
I hope so. Sure.
But as long as they don't include 16 surgeries, I think
yeah, let's hope.
we're already on track.
Yes, it's been great so far. So let's just keep going after this. No more surgeries.
Well, thanks again for being here and telling us your life story and your experiences.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. So
always happy to answer questions about it.
Perfect. So thank you guys for listening. You can always go to our website, www.fallenrise.us. Check out our merchandise. You can check out our resources for any issues that you may be going through. We have plenty of resources on there for you to reach out to. You can reach out to us at Fallen Rise as well. You can find us on Instagram at fallenrise.co. Feel free to message us about any sort of anything you're going through, or if you just need someone to talk to, we're here. That's what we're here for. We're not just a clothing brand. We're here to try and help and make a difference. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.